Millennium News Hour. I am Tansiba Nauri. In today's bulletin, we will get you detailed news from across the nation and the world. Let's begin with the headlines of the day. Biden says climate efforts more urgent than ever at summit. US judge in Texas strikes down Biden loan forgiveness plan. US sending Ukraine $400 million more in military aid. Trump faces blame from GOP as he moves forward with W8 bill. Tropical storm Nicole remnants rain from Georgia to New York. Newsom, DeSantis both claim freedom as election mandates. Warnock Walker pivot to overtime in Georgia Senate contest. Alex Jones ordered to pay $473 million more to Sandy Hook families. Section of destroyed shuttle Challenger found on ocean floor. China confirms Xi to attend G20 APEC meetings. Zelensky says Ukrainian special military units in Kherson. Killed in Nigeria gasoline tanker explosion, police say. Israel's Netanyahu given chance to form far-right government. Snyder commandeers NFL Goodell sued by DC Attorney General. And Foreman leads Panthers past rival Falcons in reign 25-15. Now news in detail. At first, election updates. Democratic U.S. Representative Kim Schreier has won a third term in Washington's 8th U.S. House District, fending off a challenge from Republicans who targeted the seat as part of their efforts to flip the chamber. Schreier, a pediatrician, is the only Democrat to have held the seat since the district was created in the early 1980s. She defeated Matt Larkin, a lawyer, abortion rights opponent, and former Washington Attorney General candidate who painted her as too far left. Tina Kotek has been elected Oregon's next governor, extending long-time Democratic control of the state and dashing Republican hopes for a rare win in a top race on the west coast of the United States. Kotek joins Maura Healey of Massachusetts as the first openly lesbian elected governors in the United States. Democrat Val Hoyle has won the open U.S. House seat in Oregon's 4th congressional district, keeping it blue following the retirement of longtime Democratic incumbent Peter DeFazio. Hoyle defeated Republican Alec Scarlatos, who was making his second bid for the seat. The district includes Oregon's southern and central coasts, including rural, conservative areas but also the more populous, liberal college towns of Eugene and Corvallis. President Joe Biden, speaking Friday at an annual global summit on climate change, said new spending on clean energy initiatives has cemented his country's commitment to fighting global warming. The United States government is putting our money where our mouth is, he said. Biden said the spending, part of broader economic legislation he signed into law this year, will change the paradigm and ensure the US hits its target for reducing emissions by 2030. His attendance at the UN climate conference, known as COP27, in the resort town of Sharm el-Sheikh is the first stop on an around-the-world trip that will also take him to a meeting of Southeast Asian leaders in Cambodia and a Group of 20 summit meeting for leaders of the world's largest economies in Bali, Indonesia. Biden boarded Air Force One late Thursday, buoyed by a stronger than expected showing by the Democratic Party in Tuesday's midterm elections, earlier congressional passage of the largest climate investment in US history, and Russian military setbacks on the Ukrainian battlefield. At the climate conference, Biden discussed a new supplemental rule that will crack down on methane emissions, expanding on a similar regulation his administration released last year. Methane is a potent greenhouse gas that contributes significantly to global warming. A US judge in Texas on Thursday blocked President Joe Biden's plan to provide millions of borrowers with up to $20,000 apiece in federal student loan forgiveness, a program that was already on hold as a federal appeals court in St. Louis considers a separate lawsuit by 6 states challenging it. District Court Judge Mark Pittman, an appointee of former President Donald Trump based in Fort Worth, said the program usurped Congress' power to make laws. In this country, we are not ruled by an all-powerful executive with a pen and a phone. Instead, we are ruled by a constitution that provides for 3 distinct and independent branches of government, Pittman wrote. He added, the court is not blind to the current political division in our country, but it is fundamental to the survival of our republic that the separation of powers as outlined in our constitution be preserved. The debt forgiveness plan would cancel $10,000 in student loan debt for those making less than $125,000 or households with less than $250,000 in income. Pell Grant recipients who typically demonstrate more financial need would get an additional $10,000 in debt forgiven. The cancellation applies to federal student loans used to attend undergraduate and graduate school, along with Parent Plus loans. The US will send $400 million more in military aid to Ukraine, US officials announced Thursday, amid concerns that financial assistance for the war against Russia could decline if Republicans take control of Congress. The aid comes as the vote counting from Tuesday's election continues, with Republicans inching closer to a narrow House majority and with control of the Senate hinging on tight races in Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia. According to the Pentagon, the aid package will contain large amounts of ammunition and, for the first time, 4 highly mobile Avenger air defense systems. Include is ammunition for the high-mobility artillery rocket systems known as HIMARS, which Ukraine has been successfully using in its counter-offensive against Russia. There also will be Stinger missiles for the Avenger system, missiles for the Hawk surface-to-air anti-aircraft system, 10,000 mortar rounds, thousands of artillery rounds for howitzers, 400 grenade launchers, 100 Humvees, cold weather gear, and 20 million rounds of ammunition for smaller individual guns and rifles. At the White House, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the new aid package would include important air defense contributions. Republicans intensified their public criticism of former President Donald Trump on Thursday, with some saying it was time for the party to move on after an unexpectedly poor showing in the midterm elections, even as he prepared to launch a third White House bid next week. Virginia's Republican Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, once a vocal Trump supporter, said voters had sent a very clear message Tuesday that enough is enough. The voters have spoken and they have said that they want a different leader, and a true leader understands when they have become a liability, she said in an appearance on Fox Business. A true leader understands that it's time to step off the stage. It is time to move on. Earl Sears, who served as co-chair of a group called Black Americans to re-elect President Trump in 2020, also said she just couldn't support another Trump campaign. Some advisors had urged Trump to delay his planned announcement until after the December 6 Senate runoff election in Georgia that could determine which party controls the Senate, to avoid turning the race into a referendum on him and unintentionally helping Democrats. But Trump, rebuffing that advice on Thursday, invited reporters to a special announcement at his Mar-a-Lago club on Tuesday, November 15 at 9 p.m. The remnants of tropical storm Nicole sent heavy rains falling from Georgia to New York on Friday, as flooding and surging ocean waters receded from a stretch of Florida coastline, where the most damaging impacts became evident after it made landfall as a hurricane. Now a depression, Nicole could dump as much as 8 inches of rain over the Blue Ridge Mountains, and there was a chance of flash and urban flooding as far north as New England. With the center of the storm about 35 miles north of Atlanta and maximum sustained winds down to 30 mph, forecasters issued a string of tornado warnings in North and South Carolina, although no touchdowns or damage were reported immediately. Much of both states and Virginia were under a tornado watch. Risks added to Atlanta's notoriously bad traffic as rain from Nicole fell across the metro area during rush hour, and a few school systems in mountainous North Georgia cancelled classes. The storm caused at least 3 deaths and swallowed once wide stretches of sand in the Daytona Beach area, famous for its drivable beaches. After coming ashore near Vero Beach early Thursday, some homes toppled into the Atlantic Ocean. Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis, governors of states on opposite ends of both the country and the political spectrum, held up their governing styles this week as models for the nation ahead of the 2024 presidential election, as they rushed to use their convincing midterm victories to stake a claim on the nation's most enduring political promise, freedom. We affirmed clearly with conviction that we are a true freedom state, Newsom, a Democrat in California, declared on Tuesday after handily winning a second term. We stood as a citadel of freedom for people across this country and indeed across the world, DeSantis, a Republican in Florida, told a raucous crowd of supporters after cruising to his own second term. But both men define freedom in vastly different ways. For Newsom, freedom means the right to say yes to an abortion, to government-funded health care for immigrants, to gender-affirming care for children. For DeSantis, freedom means the right to say no to COVID vaccines, to illegal immigration, to what he calls indoctrination or sexual orientation and gender identity in public schools. Democratic Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican challenger Herschel Walker pivoted to a decisive extra round of their Senate race Thursday with blistering attacks, while party leaders and donors around the country geared up for a 4-week campaign blitz that could determine control of the chamber for the next 2 years. With votes still being counted in Senate contests in Arizona and Nevada, the single December 6 runoff in Georgia could either decide majority control, as did the state's twin runoffs in 2021, or further pad one party's advantage. But neither Republicans nor Democrats were waiting for the western states' results to begin scrambling for big money. The Democrat Senate campaign arm announced early plans for a $7 million investment in field operations, a sum certain to be dwarfed by what both parties' various committees will eventually spend on the airwaves. Top Republicans in Washington began huddling with donors, urging their continued support after the party nationwide fell short of expectations in Tuesday's midterm elections. InfoWars host Alex Jones and his company were ordered by a judge Thursday to pay an extra $473 million for promoting false conspiracy theories about the Sandy Hook school massacre, bringing the total judgment against him in a lawsuit filed by the victims' families to a staggering $1.44 billion. Connecticut Judge Barbara Bellis imposed the punitive damages on the InfoWars host and free speech systems. Jones repeatedly told his millions of followers the massacre that killed 20 first graders and 6 educators was staged by crisis actors to enact more gun control. The record clearly supports the plaintiff's argument that the defendants' conduct was intentional and malicious and certain to cause harm by virtue of their infrastructure, ability to spread content, and massive audience, including the info warriors, the judge wrote in a 45-page ruling. Christopher Mattei, a lawyer for the Sandy Hook families, said he hopes the award sends a message to conspiracy theorists who profit from lies. A large section of the destroyed Space Shuttle Challenger has been found buried in sand at the bottom of the Atlantic, more than 3 decades after the tragedy that killed a school teacher and 6 others. NASA's Kennedy Space Center announced the discovery Thursday. It's one of the biggest pieces of Challenger found in the decades since the accident, according to CNN, and the first remnant to be discovered since 2 fragments from the left wing washed ashore in 1996. Divers for a TV documentary first spotted the piece in March while looking for wreckage of a World War II plane. NASA verified through video a few months ago that the piece was part of the shuttle that broke apart shortly after liftoff on January 28, 1986. All 7 on board were killed, including the first schoolteacher bound for space, Krista McAuliffe. China on Friday confirmed President Xi Jinping will attend both the meeting of the Group of 20 industrialized countries and the gathering of Asian Pacific nations this month in his first major overseas trip since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijian said Friday that Xi would meet with US President Joe Biden, French President Emmanuel Macron, and other leaders on the sidelines of the twin summits, with the G20 coming first in Indonesia, followed immediately by the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Forum in Thailand. Xi has largely avoided foreign travel since the beginning of the outbreak, while China adheres to its strict zero-COVID policy, mandating lockdowns and quarantines. The meetings come after Xi was granted a third 5-year term as leader of the ruling Communist Party and amid simmering disputes with the US and others over trade and territorial claims. Russia relinquished its final foothold in a major city in southern Ukraine on Friday, clearing the way for victorious Ukrainian forces to reclaim the country's only Russian-held provincial capital that could act as a springboard for further advances into occupied territory. Russia's defense ministry said its troops finished withdrawing from the western bank of the river that divides Ukraine's Kherson region at 5 a.m. The area they left included the city of Kherson, the only provincial capital Russia had captured during its nearly 9-month invasion of Ukraine. Videos and photos on social media showed residents jubilantly taking to the streets and a Ukrainian flag flying over a monument in a central Kherson square for the first time since the city was seized in early March. Some footage showed crowds cheering on men in military uniform. Ukrainian officials have not confirmed the city was back in Ukrainian hands. A spokesperson for Ukraine's military intelligence agency said an operation to liberate Kherson and the surrounding region of the same name was underway. A gasoline tanker crashed and then exploded in north-central Nigeria, killing at least 12 people, police said Friday. The tanker had brake failure along a major road in the Ofu Council area in Kogi State on Thursday night, when it collided with a vehicle obstructing the highway, causing a fireball, a police spokesman told. The vehicle crushed cars on the way and all the victims were burned to death, said William Oviaya with the Kogi Police Command. BC Kazim with Nigeria's Federal Road Safety Corps said other people were injured in the crash. The road has been cordoned off and road safety workers are working to identify the victims, Kazim said. Israel's president on Friday asked former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to form a new government, presenting the long-term leader currently standing trial on corruption charges with the chance to end years of political instability in Israel with his partners on the far right. The decision by President Isaac Herzog was announced by his office after he consulted with leaders of all of the parties elected to Israel's parliament in last week's national election. He will formally present Netanyahu with the task on Sunday and give him a month to cobble together a governing coalition with a majority in the 120-seat Knesset. Netanyahu had governed Israel for 12 successive years before being ousted by a broad but fragile coalition in 2021. His comeback in last week's election, the nation's 5th vote in 4 years, seemed to ensure Israel would have a cohesive government with a comfortable majority for the first time since 2019. Now it's time for business news. Today's New York stock close price is 15,352.69. The NYSE Composite is increased by 117.97 points or 0.77%. Tokyo stock close price is 28,263.57. The Nikkei 225 index is increased by 817.47 points or 2.98%. Shanghai stock close price is 3,087.2926. The Shanghai Composite Index is increased by 51.16 points or 1.69%. Hong Kong stock close price is 17,325.66. The Hang Seng Index is increased by 1,244.62 points or 7.74%. Bombay stock close price is 61,795.04. The Sensex Index is increased by 1,181.34 points or 1.95%. Now a look of today's sports stories. Washington Commanders owner Dan Snyder and NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell were sued by the District of Columbia on Thursday, accused of colluding to deceive fans by lying about an inquiry into sexual misconduct and a persistently hostile work environment within the team. The individual club and the league as a whole were also named in the Consumer Protection civil lawsuit, which DC Attorney General Karl Racine said was based on his office's investigation that began in the fall of 2021. Racine said the defendants jointly misled the public about the contents of and procedures surrounding lawyer Beth Wilkinson's examination of the team's workplace culture that began in 2020. His office seeks a court order that will force the league to release Wilkinson's findings. Deonta Foreman admitted he was tired, at times completely gassed, but the Carolina Panthers running back said there wasn't a chance he was going to tap on his helmet and ask to take a breather. He has waited too long in his injury-plagued career for this opportunity. When the game is on the line, there is no coming out, Foreman said. Foreman carried 31 times for 130 yards and a touchdown. LaVisca Chenault added a 41-yard burst to the end zone, and the Panthers beat the Atlanta Falcons 25-15 on a rainy Thursday night. Foreman's 31 carries were the most by a Carolina running back since Nick Going's 36 in 2004. The Panthers piled up a season-high 232 yards on the ground, and A.J. Pinheiro kicked 4 field goals after he missed 2 critical kicks in a 37-34 overtime loss to the Falcons 11 days earlier. Let's have a look on today's weather chart. That's all in today's news. Keep watching Millennium News 24 for latest updates. Millennium TV USA and Millennium News 24 network is transmitted and available to be watched free for all at TVs such as Sony, Samsung, LG, Roku TV, Amazon TV and Apple TV. And also in all European countries and Australia available with Sky Network, Worldwide Jadoo TV, Radiant IPTV, Worldwide Jago BD Network and Horizon Satellite globally. Stay connected with us for all types of informative and entertainment program. Thank you.